I jumped to our feet, but there was nowhere to run. We stood and stared as the wolf crab crawled toward us. A voice called out behind us.
Would you kids sit down? I can't see the screen.
Marty and I glanced at each other. I guess we both felt like jerks. I know I did. We dropped back into our seats and watched the wolf crab scamper across the street, chasing after a little boy on his tricycle. Marty shook his head.
What's your problem, Aaron? It's only a movie. Why did you scream like that?
You screamed too.
I only screamed because you screamed. Shh.
I sank low in the seat. On screen, the wolf crab reached out his big red claws and grabbed the kid on the trike. Goodbye, kid. That's the great thing about Shocker on Shock Street movies. They make you scream and laugh all at the same time. Marty and I sat back and enjoyed the rest of the movie. We love scary movies, but the Shock Street films are our favorites. In the end, the police caught the wolf crab, and they boiled him in a big pot of water. Then they served steamed crab to the whole town. Everybody sat around dipping him in butter sauce. They all said he was delicious. We had just seen Shocker on Shock Street 6, and it was definitely the best one of the series. The theater lights came on, and we turned up the aisle and started to make our way through the crowd.
Pretty good movie.
Do you know the coolest thing about this movie?
No, what?
That we're the first kids in the world to see it. Marty and I slapped each other a high five. We had just seen a special sneak preview. My dad works with a lot of movie people, so he got tickets for us. Know what else is really cool? The monsters, all of them. They look so incredibly real. It didn't look like special effects at all.
Hey, what if they are real? What if it isn't special effects? What if they're all real monsters?
Don't be dumb. Come on, we've got to go upstairs and see my dad.
Gee, tell me something I don't know.
Dad's office is upstairs from the theater on the 29th floor. We jogged to the elevators at the end of the hall and took one up. Dad has a really cool job. He builds theme parks and he designs all kind of rides. I know it sounds as if I'm bragging, but Dad is really smart. And he's an engineering genius. I think he is the world expert on robots. He can build robots that'll do anything. And he uses them in all his parks and studio tours. Marty and I stepped off the elevator on the 29th floor. We waved to the woman at the front desk, and then we hurried to Dad's office at the end of the hall. I always think of Dad's office as the happiest place in the world. But today, as Marty and I stepped inside, Dad didn't look too happy. He sat hunched over his desk with the telephone to his ear. His head was lowered and his eyes down. He kept a hand pressed against his forehead as he mumbled into the phone. Marty and I stopped at the doorway. I don't think Dad saw us, but he stared down at his desk. He had his tie pulled down and his shirt collar open. He muttered for a short while longer. Marty and I crept into the office. Finally, Dad sat down the phone. He raised his eyes and saw us.
Oh, hi, you two.
Dad, what's wrong?
Oh, I have very bad news, Aaron. Very bad news.
Dad, what is it? What? Then I saw the grin slowly spread across his face.
Gotcha again. You fall for that gag every time.
I rushed up to the desk, wrapped my arms around his neck, and pretended to strangle him. We both collapsed against each other, laughing, and Marty stood in the doorway shaking his head.
Mr. Wright, that is so lame.
I'm sorry. You kids are just too easy to fool. I couldn't resist. Actually, I've got good news.
Good news? Is this another joke? He picked up something from his desk and held it in his palm. Marty and I came closer to examine it. It was a little white plastic vehicle with 4 wheels.
This is a model of the tram that will be used at the Shocker Studio Tour.
Do you mean the tour is finally gonna open?
Yeah, we're finally about to open it to the public. But before we do, I want you two to test it out.
You mean it?
Yes!
I built this whole tour, and I want you two to be the first kids in the world to go on it. I want to know your opinion. You know, what you like about it, what you don't like.
Yes!
Dad, the Shock Street movies are the best. This is awesome. Is the tour very scary?
I hope so. I tried to make it as scary and real as I could. You get on the tram, and you ride through the whole movie studio. You get to meet all of the characters from the horror movies, and then the tram takes you on a slow ride down Shock Street.
The real Shock Street? Do you mean it? Do you get to ride down the real street where they make the movies? Maybe Erin shouldn't go. She was so scared during the movie sneak preview, I had to hold her hand.
Give me a break. If anyone was a scaredy cat wimp, it was you, Marty.
Calm down, guys. No arguing. You have to keep together. You know, you two will be the only ones on the tour tomorrow. The only ones.
Wow, that's great. It's totally great. It's gonna be the best. Can Mom come too?
Excuse me? What did you say?
I asked if Mom could come too.
Are you feeling okay, Aaron?
Yeah, fine. Dad squinted at me through his glasses. His whole face turned bright red. Suddenly, I felt very confused and upset. What had I done wrong? Was something wrong with Mom? Why was Dad staring at me like that? Dad came around the desk and put an arm around my shoulder.
You know, I think you and Marty will have a better time if you go by yourselves. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I guess. I still wondered why he was staring at me so suspiciously, but I decided not to ask him. I didn't want him to get angry or something and change his mind about us going on the tour. Marty grinned at me.
I hope it's really scary.
Don't worry, you won't be disappointed.
The next afternoon, Dad drove Marty and me to Shocker Studios. Marty was so excited he could barely sit still. He kept bouncing his legs up and down and tapping his hands on the seat. Anyway, the car climbed up the Hollywood Hills, and the road curved past houses and tree-filled yards cut into the sides of the hills. Far in the distance, I could see the Hollywood sign, stretching in the haze across a dark peak. It's so gloomy out.
Perfect for a horror movie tour. Which monsters are we going to see? Is Shockro on the tour? Do we really get to walk on Shock Street?
I'm not telling. I don't want to spoil it for you. I want it all to be a big surprise.
I just want to know so I can warn Erin. I don't want her to get scared. She might faint or something.
Then I turned around and tried to punch him, but I couldn't reach. Marty leaned forward and messed up my hair with both hands. Get off me! I'm warning you!
Okay, take it easy, you guys. We're here.
I turned and stared out the windshield. Up ahead, an enormous sign proclaimed Shocker Studios in scary blood-red letters. We drove up to the huge iron gates in the front. They were closed, but a guard in a small booth sat reading a newspaper. I glimpsed gold script letters above the gate. They spelled out one word: beware. Dad pulled right up to the gate, and the guard peered up. He gave Dad a big smile. Then he pressed a button, and the gates slowly swung open. Dad drove his car into the parking garage beside the studio. The garage seemed to stretch on forever, but I could see only 3 or 4 cars inside.
When we open next week, this garage will be jammed. There will be thousands of people here. I hope.
And today, we're the only ones.
Marty jumped out of the car. A few minutes later, we were standing on the platform outside the main building, facing a wide street, waiting for the tram to take us on the tour. 2 men in business suits came zooming along the street in a golf cart. One of them waved to Dad.
Can we ride in one of those carts?
No, Marty, you two have to take the automated tram. And remember, stay in the tram car no matter what. I'll be waiting here for you on the platform when you get back, and I want a full report. I want to know what you like and what you don't like. Oh, and listen, don't worry if things don't work exactly right. There are still a few bugs to work out.
Hey, here comes the tram.
The tram came rolling silently around the corner. I counted 6 tram cars in all. They were shaped like roller coaster cars, you know, open on the top, only much longer and wider. The cars were black. A grinning white skull was painted on the front of the first car. A red-haired woman wearing a black uniform was seated on the first bench of the front car. And she waved to us as the tram rolled up to the platform. She was the only passenger. She hopped out as the tram stopped and smiled at my dad. Her red hair fluttered in the wind.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm your tour guide. Yeah.
Can we ride in front?
Why, yes, of course. You can sit anywhere you want. This whole ride is just for you.
I think Marty is ready to begin.
She leaned over the tram car, tugged out a black canvas bag, and pulled a red plastic gun from the bag. She gripped the plastic pistol tightly. It looked like something in a Star Trek movie. Her smile faded. Her green eyes narrowed.
This is a Shocker stun ray blaster. Be careful with them, guys. They can freeze a monster in its tracks from 20 feet. Don't fire them unless you have to. And I sure hope you don't have to.
You're kidding, right? Those are just toys, right? She didn't answer, and then she handed the blaster to me. Then she pulled out another blaster from her bag and started to bring it to Marty. But she stumbled over a cord on the platform. She let out a startled cry as the blaster went off in her hand. There was a bright ray of yellow light, and then Linda stood frozen on the platform. Linda? Dad, she's frozen. I turned to Dad. To my surprise, he was laughing. When I turned back to Linda, she had a big smile on her face, too. She handed Marty his stun blaster.
That's the first shock on the Shocker Tour. I think I really shocked you, Marty.
No way, I knew it was a joke. I just played along.
Oh, come on, Marty. You nearly dropped your teeth.
Aaron, I wasn't scared, really. I just went along with a joke. Do you really think I'd fall for a dumb plastic blaster gun?
You know, Marty is such a jerk. Why can't he ever admit he's scared? We climbed into the front seat of the tram. I looked for a seatbelt or a safety bar, but there wasn't one. I turned to Linda. Are you coming with us?
Oh, no, you're on your own. The tram moves automatically.
Remember, I'll meet you back here at the end of the ride. Have a good time. And listen, I want a full report.
Don't get out of the tram. Keep your head and arms inside and don't stand up while the tram is moving. First stop is the Haunted House of Horror. Good luck.
She stepped on a blue button on the platform. The tram started up with a jolt. Marty and I were thrown back against the seat. Then the tram rolled smoothly forward. I turned back to see her waving at us, her long hair fluttering in the wind. A strong breeze blew against us as the tram made its way down the hill. Do you realize how awesome this is? We're gonna see all the great creatures from the Shocker movies.
Think we'll see Shockro?
Probably.
I want to see Wolf Boy and Wolf Girl and, the Piranha People and Captain Sick, the Great Gopher Mutant, and all of those guys.
Wow, look! Cool! As the tram turned a sharp corner, the Haunted House of Horror loomed darkly in front of us. An iron fence surrounded the place. As we moved to the side, the rusty gate swung open. Look! I pointed to the dark windows on the second floor, and the shutters flew open all at once, then banged shut again. The lights came on in the windows. Through the window shades, I could see the silhouettes of skeletons swinging slowly back and forth. We circled the Haunted House of Horrors. We could hear screams of terror from inside. The shutters banged again and again. The porch swing continued to creak back and forth, as if a ghost was swinging on it.
That's kind of cool, but not too scary. When are we going inside?
Would you sit back and stop complaining? The ride just started. Don't spoil it for me, okay? Marty stuck his tongue out at me, but then he settled back against the seat. We heard a long howl, and then a scream of horror. The tram made its way silently to the back of the house. We moved quickly through the overgrown backyard. The tram picked up speed. We bounced over the lawn and up to the back door. A wooden sign above the door read, "Abandon all hope." I thought we were going to crash right into the door, so I ducked. But the door creaked open, and we burst inside. Then the tram slowed. We were in a dark, dust-covered kitchen. The oven door opened and closed by itself. The teapot on the stove started to whistle. Dishes on the shelves rattled. The cackling grew louder. This is pretty creepy.
Boring.
Marty, give me a break. You can be a bad sport if you want, but don't ruin it for me. The tram moved out of the dark kitchen into an even darker hallway. Paintings of goblins and ugly creatures hung on the walls. As we approached a closet door, it sprang open, and a shrieking skeleton popped out in front of us, its jaws open, its arms jutting out to grab us. The skeleton snapped back into the closet, and the tram turned a corner. I saw a flickering light up ahead. We rode into a large round room. I raised my eyes to the flickering light and saw a chandelier above our heads with a dozen burning candles. The tram stopped beneath it. The chandelier began to shake. Then, with a hiss, the candles all flickered out at once.
Welcome to my humble home.
Who is that? Where's it coming from? Hey, Marty. Marty! Marty was gone. I froze, staring into the darkness. Where did he go? He knows we aren't supposed to leave the tram car. Did he climb out? Marty! Someone grab my arm. Hey, where are you? I can't see you.
I can't see you either, but I didn't move. I'm still sitting right next to you.
Huh? I reached out and felt the sleeve of his shirt.
This is cool. I'm waving my arms, but I can't see a thing. You really can't see me?
No?
It's some kind of trick with the lights. Black light or something. Some kind of neat movie special effect.
Well, it creeped me out. I really thought you disappeared. And then we both jumped. A fire suddenly blazed in the big brick fireplace, and a bright orange light filled the room. A big black armchair spun around to reveal a grinning skeleton. The skeleton raised its bony yellowed head.
I hope you like my house, because you will never leave.
The tram jolted to a start. We rumbled out of the living room into a long, dark hallway. I fell back against the seat as we picked up speed. We whipped around another corner and made another sharp turn. We were climbing now. And then we took a sharp dip that made both of us throw up our hands. A wild roller coaster ride in total darkness. It was awesome. Even better because we didn't expect it. We bumped hard against each other as the tram whirled around in the black halls of the haunted house of horrors. I hung on to the front of the car for dear life. I gripped so hard, both hands ached. There was no seatbelt, no safety bar. What if we tumbled out? The car tilted sharply sideways as if reading my thoughts. I lost my grip and slid against the side of the car. I frantically reached out for something to hold on to. The car tilted back, and I slid into place on the long seat.
Whoa, that was excellent!
Gripping the front of the car, I took a deep breath and tried to slow my racing heart. And then a door swung open in front of us, and we burst through it. I saw trees, the gray fog sky. We were back outside, racing through the backyard. Both of us were tossed from side to side as we roared over the weeds, zigzagging through the dark trees. Whoa! Stop! The wind blew hard against my face. The tram clattered and squealed as we bumped over the rough ground. We were out of control. Something had definitely gone wrong with the tram. Bouncing hard on the plastic seat, holding on tightly, I searched for someone who could help us. No one was in sight. We bumped onto the road. The tram started to slow, and I turned to Marty. His hair was blown over his face. He was totally dazed. The tram slowed, until we were creeping smoothly along.
That was great! I'm gonna tell your dad that the roller coaster ride through the halls was the best! Hey, where are we?
The tram had come to a stop. I pulled myself up and peered around. We had parked between two rows of tall evergreen bushes. The bushes were shaped like spears reaching up to the sky. Above us, the afternoon sun was trying to break through the fog. The shadows of the bushes fell over our tram car. Marty stood up and turned to the back of the tram.
There's nothing around here. We're in the middle of nowhere. Why did we stop?
I saw the bush move. It wiggled. Then the bush next to it wiggled too. I saw glowing red eyes behind the bush. Marty? There's someone there. Another pair of eyes, and then another pair of eyes, both staring out at us from behind the evergreen bushes. And then two dark claws. And then rustling sounds. The bush tilted as a dark figure leaped out, followed by another. Snarling, growling. It was too late to run. We were surrounded by the ugly creatures, snuffling, wheezing creatures who staggered out from the bushes. Reaching out for us, they began to climb into the tram. Marty and I jumped to our feet. I started to back away. The snarling, growling monsters came at us from both sides. Leave us alone! A monster, covered in tangled fur, opened his jaws to reveal long, jagged rows of yellow teeth. He stepped closer, and then he swiped at me with a fat paw.
Would you like an autograph?
Huh?
You know, an autographed photo.
Hey, you're Ape-Face!
The hairy creature nodded his head. He raised a black and white snapshot to Marty.
Yeah, kid, I'm Ape-Face. You want a photo?
Yeah, okay.
The big ape pulled a marker from behind his ear and signed a photo for Marty. Now that my heartbeat was returning to normal, I began to recognize some of the other creatures. The guy covered in purple slime was the toxic wild man, and I recognized Sweet Sue, the walking, talking baby doll with real hair you can brush. She was really a mutant murderer from Mars. And the frog-faced guy covered from head to toe with purple and brown warts was the fabulous frog guy, also known as the Toadinator. Remember, he starred in Pond Scum and Pond Scum 2, two of the scariest movies ever made. Hey, Mr. Frog Guy, can I have your autograph? He croaked and slipped a pen into his wart-covered hand. Then I leaned forward and eagerly watched him sign a photo. It was hard for him to write. The pen kept slipping in his slimy frog hands. Marty and I collected a bunch of autographs. Then the creatures went snarling and wheezing back into their bushes. That was so dumb! When I saw them creeping out from behind the bushes, I thought I'd have a cow. But it's kind of cool to get their autographs.
It's just a bunch of actors in costumes. It's for babies.
Mr. Know-It-All and I settled down into the seat as the tram started to back out, down the long, sloping hill. I could see the white studio buildings. I wondered if they were making a movie on one of the sound stages. and I wondered if the tram would take us to watch them shoot. I could see 2 golf carts moving along the road. They were carrying people down to the soundstage buildings. The tram bounced over the grass up a hill. A voice burst from the speaker in the tram car.
Your next stop will be the Cave of the Living Creeps.
The Cave of the Living Creeps? Wow, that sounds scary.
Sure does. But we had no idea just how scary it would turn out to be. As the Cave of the Living Creeps loomed in front of us, Marty grabbed my arm.
Oh, this is sweet.
The mouth of the cave was a huge dark hole cut into the side of the hill. The tram slowed down as we approached the dark opening. A sign above the entrance had one word carved roughly into it. Farewell. The tram car lurched forward. Hey! I ducked my head. What a tight squeeze. The air instantly grew colder and damp. The tram, it moved deeper into the cave. I kept my eyes straight ahead. The cave grew wide again. Dark shadows shifted and danced all over the walls as we rolled past. I felt something cold and slimy drop onto the back of my neck. Cut it out! Get your cold hands off me! It wasn't Marty touching me. Both of his hands gripped the front of the car. Then what was on the back of my neck? So cold and wet? I shuddered. My whole body shook. Marty! Help!
Aaron, what's your problem?
It's on the back of my neck! I could feel the cold, wet thing start to move, so I reached back and pulled it off. It felt sticky and cold between my fingers. It slithered and wriggled, so I dropped it on the seat. A worm! A huge, long, white worm.
Weird. I've never seen a worm that big. And it's white. Cool. Let me touch it.
Marty raised his hand and slowly lowered his pointer finger to the worm in its middle. What is it, Marty? What's wrong? Marty's eyes bulged. He reached up and pulled a white worm off the top of his head.
I got one too.
Yuck! His worm was nearly as long as a shoelace. We both tossed our worms out of the tram. Then I felt a soft, damp plop on my shoulder, and then a cold plop on the top of my head, and then another on my forehead. Help! I started thrashing my arms, grabbing at the worms, starting to pull them off me. Marty was battling them too, trying to dodge as more and more white worms fell from the ceiling. I saw one fall on his shoulder. I saw another one begin to wrap itself around his ear. As fast as I could, I pulled them off me and tossed them over the side of the tram. The tram turned sharply, sending us both sliding over the seat. The cave narrowed again as we entered a different tunnel. I searched for more worms. My whole body itched. The back of my neck tingled. I couldn't stop shaking.
They stopped falling.
That was totally gross.
I don't think that little kids like the worms. I think they'll get too scared. I'm gonna tell that to your dad.
I started to reply, but I felt something drop over me. Something scratchy and dry. It covered my face, my shoulders. I grabbed at it, desperate to get it off my face. As I struggled, I turned and saw Marty squirming and batting his arms, caught under the same net.
It's a big spider web.
And then I saw the black dots scurrying through the net. It took me a few seconds to realize what they were. Spiders! Hundreds of them! I pulled a spider off my forehead and then another off my t-shirt.
The spiders are in my hair!
Marty suddenly forgot about acting cool. As the tram rolled silently on, we both squirmed, struggling to flick away the black spiders. I pulled 3 of them out of my hair. Then I felt one climb into my nose. I opened my mouth in a horrified scream and sneezed it out. Marty plucked a spider off my neck and sent it soaring through the air. The last spider. I couldn't see or feel anymore. I decided to tell my dad that the worms and spiders were too scary. He should get rid of them before the studio tour opens to the public. I crossed my arms in front of me and kept my eyes straight ahead. I wondered what we would run into next. I hoped there weren't any other disgusting insects waiting to fall on us and climb all over us. The narrow tunnel opened to a wide cavern, where the ceiling appeared to be a mile high. There were giant rocks everywhere. Ahead of us, I heard water dripping. The tram pulled up to the back wall and then stopped. Marty and I turned in our seat, letting our eyes explore the huge cavern.
This is kind of boring. When do we get going?
I don't know. Why did we stop here? It's just a big empty cave. We waited for the tram to back up and take us out of there. We both turned around and got up on our knees, peering to the back of the tram. Nothing moved. We listened to the steady drip of water echoing off the high stone wall. No other sound. I cut my hands around my mouth.
Can anybody hear us? I think we're stuck here. What's up with this tram? Do you think we're... Marty? What's going on? Hey!
I stared at the empty seat beside me and reached both hands out. Another lighting trick? Another optical illusion? A cold shiver rolled down my back. This time, Marty was really gone.
Marty? Hey! Marty!
A scraping sound beside the tram made me jump. I spun around and saw Marty grinning at me from the cave floor.
Gotcha!
You creep! You deliberately tried to scare me.
Well, it isn't too hard a job. Anyway, I just climbed down to check things out.
But the tram might start up any second. You know what the tour guide told us. She said we should never leave the tram.
I think the tram is stuck or something. Maybe it came off its tracks. But there aren't any tracks.
Marty, get back in here. If it starts up and leaves you standing there...
I think it broke down. Your father said that some things might not work.
You mean we're stranded here? All by ourselves in this creepy cave?
Marty stepped to the front of the car and squeezed between the tram and the cave wall. Then he tried to push the tram back, shoving with both hands as hard as he could. It wouldn't budge.
Oh, this is horrible. This isn't any fun at all. Is anybody here? Does anybody work here? The tram is stuck. Please, can somebody help?
Now what?
You'd better climb down. We have to walk.
Huh? Walk? In this creepy dark cave? No way, Marty.
You're not afraid, are you, Aaron?
Yeah, I am a little. I don't see any exits. We'd have to walk all the way back through those tunnels with all those spiders and worms and everything.
We can find a way out. There's got to be a door somewhere.
Well, I think we should stay in the tram. If we stay here and wait, someone will come and find us.
It could be days. Come on, Aaron. I'm gonna walk. Are you coming with me?
No way. I'm staying right here.
Well, bye then.
He turned and started walking quickly across the cave floor. I knew he shouldn't go off by himself. I knew he shouldn't go unless I joined him.
Marty!
Bye. I'm not waiting here all day. See you later.
But Marty, wait!
Are you coming or not, Aaron?
Okay.
Hurry up. Let's get out of here.
I had no choice. I climbed over the side of the tram and dropped to the cave floor. I started walking slowly toward Marty. He was walking backward now, motioning for me to catch up to him. But I stopped, and my mouth dropped open in horror.
Don't look at me like that. Don't stare at me like I'm doing something wrong.
But I wasn't staring at Marty. I was staring at the thing creeping up behind Marty.
Aaron, get a move on. What's your problem?
Marty kept backing up, backing right into the enormous creature. I struggled to warn him. Marty spun around and saw it too. His sneaker slid on the cave floor and he came running back to me.
What is that thing?
At first, I thought it was some kind of machine. You know, it looked like one of those tall steel cranes you see on construction sites. But as it rose up on its wire-thin back legs, I saw that it was alive. It had round black eyes the size of billiard balls. They spun wildly in its skinny silver skull. Its mouth appeared soft and mushy. A thick gray tongue darted out between long, bristly whiskers and swung from side to side. The whole creature looked like some kind of gross stick figure. Its long back legs bent and sprang forward, bent then sprang forward. The black eyes stopped whirling and focused on me and Marty. I pressed my back hard against the cave wall.
I think it's a praying mantis.
Well, what's it gonna do?
To my surprise, Marty suddenly started to laugh. I turned to him and grabbed his shoulder. Was he totally losing it?
Marty, are you okay?
Of course. Why should we be scared, Aaron? It's a big robot. It's programmed to walk up to the tram.
But Marty...
It's all on computer. It isn't real. It's part of the ride.
I stared up at the creature. Big drops of saliva rolled off its fat tongue and hit the cave floor.
It's, really lifelike?
Your dad is a genius at this stuff. We'll have to tell him what a good job he did on the praying mantis. I mean, he said there were still some bugs, remember? This must be one of them.
The insect rubbed its front legs together. It made a shrill whistling sound that made my ears ache. I was still holding my ears as a second giant praying mantis hopped out from behind a tall rock.
Look, another one. Wow, they move so smoothly. You can't even tell that they're machines.
The two silvery insects chittered at each other, a sharp, shrill, metallic sound. Their black eyes twirled. Their antennae rotated rapidly, excitedly. Gobs of saliva rolled down their tongues and splattered to the floor. The second one flashed silvery wings on its back.
Great-looking robots. We'd better get back in the tram. It'll probably start up again now that we've seen the giant bugs.
The two insects hopped closer, their stick-like legs springing hard, bouncing off the smooth cave floor.
I hope you're right. Those insects look too real. I want to get out of here.
But the first mantis leaped between us and the tram, blocking our path. We tried to step around it, but it took a big hop to stay in front of us.
It won't let us pass.
The big creature suddenly swung down and slammed its head against my chest. The powerful headbutt sent me sprawling backward.
Hey, stop that! That machine must be broken.
Its black eyes glowing, the mantis lowered its head again. It gave me another hard push towards the center of the cave. Its partner moved quickly to trap Marty. It lowered its body and prepared to headbutt him. But Marty quickly backed away, raising his hands in front of him like a shield. He hurried to join me. I spun around to discover two more huge, ugly mantises climbing out from behind rocks. Then two more. Marty and I huddled together in the middle of the cavern as the creatures hopped and scraped around us. Then they rose up high on their hind legs, their black eyes gleaming, their short stick arms waving. The giant insects all began chittering at once. They formed a circle around us, moving closer. Their tongues whipped back and forth. Thick gobs of mantis saliva hit the floor.
We're surrounded.
They're out of control.
What are they gonna do to us?
Well, maybe they're voice controlled. Stop! Stop!
They didn't stop. One of them tilted its silvery head and opened its huge, ugly mouth wide and spit out a black gob. It spattered onto Marty's sneaker. He jumped back. His sneaker stuck to the floor. He struggled to tug it free.
Oh, yuck! Watch out, that black stuff, it's like glue.
Another mantis opened its mouth wide and spit out a huge black gob of sticky goo. It splotched on the shoulder of my t-shirt. It was so hot, it burned me right through my shirt. The others chittered and scraped their hairy stick arms, their tongues darting back and forth. They began to lower their heads to us. Another black gob missed Marty's foot by inches. The stun guns! Maybe the guns will work against these bugs.
Those guns are only toys. Besides, the guns are in the tram. No way they're gonna let us get back to the tram.
Then what are we gonna do? Suddenly, an idea flashed into my mind.
Marty, how do you normally get rid of bugs?
Huh? Aaron, what are you talking about?
Well, you step on them, right? Don't you usually step on them?
But Aaron, these bugs are big enough to step on us.
It's worth a try, Marty.
I raised my sneaker and tromped as hard as I could on the foot of the nearest mantis. The giant insect let out a shrill hiss and hopped backwards. Marty stomped on another insect, bringing his sneaker down hard on its foot. That creature fell back too, raising its head in a shrill hiss of pain. I stomped down hard again. A big mantis fell onto its side. All four stick legs thrashed in the air.
Let's go!
I turned and burst through the circle of insects. The cave erupted in hisses and shrill whistles, angry chittering and croaks. I glimpsed Marty lurching after me. I ran to the tram and grabbed both plastic stun guns. Then I ran along the stone cave wall. Marty came running behind me at full speed. The mantises were hopping across the dirt floor after us. Where to run? Where? And then I saw the narrow opening in the cave wall. Just a crack, really. But I dove for it, slipped into it, squeezed myself into the dark hole between the stone, and burst out the other side into the misty daylight. Outside! I could see the road that led down to the studio buildings. I felt so happy. Then as I started to catch my breath, I heard Marty's terrified cry.
Aaron, help! Help! They got me! Oh,
Could I help Marty? How could I get him out of the cave? With a gasp, I spun around. To my surprise, he was leaning against the cave wall, one elbow against the rock, his legs crossed, a big grin on his round face.
April Fools!
You jerk! You scared me to death. Don't play any more dumb jokes like that. This place is too scary. Those big insects are...
Yeah, they were scary. They were so real. How do you think they made them spit like that?
I don't know. I was beginning to think that these creatures we were seeing were all real. They didn't move like mechanical creatures. They appeared to breathe, and their eyes focused on Marty and me as if they could really see us. Marty was so sure that they were all robots and that we were seeing some awesome special effects. We were on a movie studio tour after all. My dad was a genius when it came to designing mechanical creatures and building theme park rides. Maybe Dad had really outdone himself this time. But I had the feeling that we were in danger, that something was out of control. I suddenly wished we weren't the first two kids to try out the tour. Marty, he was so eager to prove that he was braver than me. I couldn't tell him what I was really thinking. So I picked up the two plastic stun guns and handed one to him. He tucked the barrel of his gun into his jeans pocket and started running across the grass. I turned and then followed him. We crossed the road and stepped into a movie set town. A small town with low, 1- and 2-story buildings, small shops, a country-looking general store, big old houses in the blocks beyond the stores.
Hey, Aaron, look where we are. Check it out.
Do you think this is really the set they use in the movies?
Don't you know where you are?
My eyes fell on the crumbling old mansion half hidden by the twisted trees. And across from it, I saw the crooked picket fence that ran around the old cemetery. We were on Shock Street. No way, this really is Shock Street. This is where they filmed all the movies. Check out that empty lot. That's where the Mad Mangler hung out. Remember? In Shocker 3? Remember? He mangled everyone who walked by.
Of course I remember.
Marty stepped into the empty lot. Tall weeds bent low, blown by the moaning wind. Shadows moved against the fence at the back. I stayed on the sidewalk, trying to see what cast the shadows. Marty, come back. It's getting dark.
Scared, Aaron?
It's just an empty lot. Let's keep walking.
People always thought it was just an empty lot until the Mad Mangler jumped out and mangled them.
Marty, you are losing it.
Oh, I wish I had a camera. I'd really like a picture of me standing in the Mangler's lot. Or even better if I...
Hey, wait up! Marty took off, running at full speed. A few seconds later, I saw where he was headed. The old cemetery. He ran up to the cracked and peeling wooden gate and turned back to me.
Even better, I'd like a photo of me standing in the cemetery.
We don't have a camera. Get away from there. Marty ignored me. Marty, let's go. Come on, it's getting late. Dad's probably waiting for us, wondering what happened. He tugged the gate open a little wider and slipped inside. Marty, please, don't go in.
Aaron, it's just a movie set. You didn't used to be such a total wimp.
I just have a bad feeling about the cemetery. A very bad feeling.
It's part of the tour.
But this gate was closed. It was closed so that people don't go in. Marty, please. I gripped the fence with both hands and watched him. He took 3 steps towards the old graves. Then his hand shot straight up in the air, and he dropped out of sight. I stared into the darkness, blinking hard. Marty? I knew I had no choice. I had to go in there and see what had happened to him. Taking a deep breath, I pushed myself through the opening. The ground was soft. I took 1 step, then another. I stopped when I heard Marty's voice.
Hey, be careful.
Huh? Where are you?
Down here.
I peered down into an open grave. Marty stared up at me. He had dirt on his cheeks and down the front of his t-shirt. He raised both hands.
Help me out, I fell.
I had to laugh. He looked ridiculous standing in that hole covered in dirt.
It's not funny, help me out.
I warned you I had a bad feeling.
Oh, it smells down here.
What's it smell like?
like dirt. Get me out.
Okay, okay. I grabbed his hands and tugged. He kicked his feet, digging the toes of his sneakers into the soft dirt. A few seconds later, he was back on the ground, frantically brushing himself off.
That was cool. Now I can tell people I was in a grave in the Shock Street Cemetery.
A chill ran down my back as the wind picked up. Something gray floated silently between two old gravestones.
Let's get out of here.
Check out these graves. They're all cracked and faded. I can barely read the names. That's so cool. And look how they sprayed cobwebs over that row of stones. Ooh, creepy, huh?
Marty, can we go? Dad is probably worried by now. Maybe the tram started up again. Come on, maybe we can find it.
He ignored me. I watched him lean over a tombstone to read the words cut into it.
Jim Socks, 1840 to 1887. Jim Socks, get it? And look at the ones next to it. Bend over, sit up. These are all funny.
Bend over and sit up were pretty funny. Then I heard a soft cry from the back of the graveyard. I held my breath and listened hard. The wind whistled through the tall grass. Rising above the wind came another shrill cry. A cat, I wondered? Is the cemetery filled with cats? Or is it a child? Marty heard it too. He moved down the row of stones until he stood beside me. Another shrill cry. Definitely human. A girl? I shivered. I heard another cry. Louder. Closer. The cries had to be coming from the loudspeaker somewhere.
Whoa!
A hand shot up from the ground in front of us. A green hand, its long fingers unfolded, as if reaching for us. Help! Another green hand shot up from the dirt, then two more. Hands were bursting up through the grass all around us, their fingers twisting and arching, reaching out.
Oh, this is just like in the movies.
Then, a hand poked up beside him and grabbed his ankle.
Aaron, help!
But I couldn't help. Two green hands were wrapped around my ankles and were pulling me down into the grave.
Come down.
No! My arms thrashed in the air. I tried to kick, but the hands gripped me so tightly, so firmly. I struggled not to fall. If I fell, I knew they would grab my hands too and pull me face down into the earth. This isn't a joke, I thought. These hands were real. They were really trying to pull me underground.
Help, Aaron!
I saw Marty fall. He toppled to the grass onto his knees. Two hands gripped his ankles. Then two more green hands poked up from the dirt to grab his wrist. No! Never! To my surprise, I pulled free. One foot sank into the soft grass. I glanced down. My sneaker had slid off. The hand still gripped around the sneaker, but my foot was free. I pulled off the other sneaker. I was free now. I quickly pulled off my socks. I knew it'd be easier to run barefoot. Then I hurried over to Marty. He was flat on his stomach. 6 hands held him down, tugging at him. His whole body twisted and shook. He raised his head when he saw me.
Aaron, help me!
I dropped to my knees and reached for his sneakers, tugging them off. The green hands gripped the sneakers tightly. Marty kicked his feet free and tried to climb to his knees. I grabbed a green hand and pulled it off his wrist. Marty rolled free and jumped to his feet, gasping, trembling. Your socks! Pull them off! Hurry! He tore them off his feet. Dozens of hands stretched up from the tall grass and grabbed wildly for us. Marty and I froze. The soft, sad voices seemed to hypnotize me. My legs suddenly felt as if they were made of stone. And then I saw a green head pop up from the dirt. Then another head. Bald green heads with empty eye sockets and open, toothless mouths. Then I saw shoulders and arms. More heads poking up. Bright green bodies pulling up from beneath the ground. Marty! They're coming after us! Marty and I both ran without saying a word. Side by side, we darted across the tall grass between the rows of crooked tombstones. Marty reached the wooden gate first and slipped through back to Shock Street. I could hear moans and groans and eerie calls behind me, but I didn't look back. I dove for the gate and squeezed through it. Running into the street, I stopped to catch my breath. I bent over and pressed my hands against my knees. My sides ached. I sucked in breath after breath.
Don't stop! Aaron, keep going!
I took a deep breath and followed him down the street.
Marty, where is everybody?
Shop Street was empty. The houses and shops all dark. Shouldn't there be people around? This is a big movie studio. Where are the people who work for Shocker Studios? Why isn't anyone around to help us?
Something is wrong. The robots are out of control or something.
At last, Marty agreed with me. He finally agreed that something was terribly wrong.
We gotta find your dad. We gotta tell him there's a problem.
We have to find the tram. If we can get back to the tram, it will take us back to Dad.
There has to be a way out of Shock Street. It's only a movie set.
We ran past a tall mansion with 2 statues. I didn't remember it from any of the Shocker movies. Beyond the mansion stretched a big, empty dirt lot. At the back of the lot stood a low brick wall, just a foot or 2 taller than Marty and me.
Cut through here. If we can climb up the wall, we can probably see the studio road.
We both turned into the empty lot. The dirt felt cold and wet. As we crossed the field, our feet tossed up big clumps of mud. I pumped my legs harder as the mud grew softer. As I ran, the cold mud rose up over my ankles. Marty and I were nearly to the brick wall when we ran into the sinkhole. The ground gave way beneath us. I tried to grab onto something, but there was nothing to grab. The mud oozed over my ankles, my legs, and my knees. Marty was beside me. His arms were waving wildly. The mud was up over his waist, and he was still sinking fast. I kicked hard, tried to raise my knees, but I was trapped and dropping down into the dark, wet ooze. I couldn't stop myself. The mud bubbled up over my neck, and I was sinking fast. I held my breath. The mud rose up to my chin. In a second, it'll be over my head, I thought. And then I felt something grab my arm. Strong hands slipped under my arms. I felt the hands slide into the mud. They gripped me harder. I felt myself being tugged up, tugged by someone very strong. And then there I was standing on the surface, still held by the 2 powerful hands.
Marty, are you...
I'm up, Aaron. I'm okay.
The strong hands finally let go. My legs trembled. I wobbled but remained standing. I turned to see who had rescued me and stared into the glowing red eyes of a wolf. A human with the face of a wolf. Clawed hands covered in black fur. A long brown snout curved in an open toothy grin. Sharp pointed ears above a thick tuft of black wolf fur. A female. She wore a silvery catsuit, sleek and tight-fitting. As I stared in shock, she opened her mouth in a throaty growl. I recognized her at once. Wolf Girl. I turned to see her companion, Wolf Boy. He had pulled Marty out of the mud hole. Marty's whole body was caked in mud. He tried to wipe his face, but only managed to smear more mud over his cheeks.
You saved us. Thank you. We lost the tram, and we need to get back, back to where the ride began. Please? Can you help us get back to the tram, or can you take us to the main building? My dad is waiting for me there.
We know you're just actors, but we don't want to be scared anymore. We've had enough, okay?
Wolf Girl's eyes flashed. A long white string of saliva drooled over Wolf Boy's black lips. Something inside me snapped. I totally lost it.
Stop it! Just stop it! Marty is right. We don't want to be scared now, so stop the werewolf act and help us.
Wolf Girl snapped her jaws. A long pink tongue slid out, and she licked her jagged teeth hungrily.
That's enough! Stop the act! Stop it! Stop it!
I reached up with both hands, grabbed the fur on the sides of the mask, and I tugged the mask with all my strength. I felt real fur and warm skin. It wasn't a mask. I jerked my hands away. My whole body trembled.
Marty? It's not an act.
Huh?
They're not actors. Something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong.
Marty took a step back. Both werewolves lowered their heads as if preparing to attack.
Do you believe me? Do you finally believe me?
Marty didn't say a word. I think he was too terrified to talk. Saliva poured from the werewolves' mouths. Their eyes glowed like fire in the darkness. Their furry chests began to heave in and out. Their breaths came loud and hoarse. I grabbed Marty and tugged him to the wall.
Up! Get up! Maybe they can't reach us up there.
Marty leaped high. His hand slapped on the top of the wall, then slid back down. He tried again, grabbed for the top of the wall, and slid back down.
Oh, I can't. It's too high.
We've got to! As Marty leaped for the wall again, I reached down and grabbed his muddy foot and gave him a hard boost. This time his hands caught the top of the brick wall and held on. He tugged himself up, turned, and grabbed my hands. He pulled up and I jumped. I struggled to scramble up beside him, but I couldn't get my knees up. I can't do it.
Keep trying.
He tugged my arms with all his strength. I heard the snap of jaws. I felt hot breath at the bottom of my foot. I sprang to the top and scrambled to my feet. The werewolves prepared to attack again. Marty and I stood pressed close together, staring down at them.
We can't stay up here forever. What do we do?
I squinted into the darkness. Was that the studio road on the other side of the wall? Too dark to tell. The werewolves leaped again. I jumped back and nearly toppled off the wall. Marty and I bumped into each other. My eyes fell on Marty's gun. The plastic stun gun. Its handle poked out from his jeans pocket. Without saying a word, I grabbed the handle and tugged the plastic pistol from Marty's jeans.
Aaron, what are you doing?
They gave us the guns for a reason. Maybe this will stop them.
It's only a toy.
I didn't care. It was worth a try. I raised the plastic gun and aimed it at the two werewolves. 1, 2, 3, fire! The gun shot out a beam of yellow light. It didn't stop the werewolves. It didn't even seem to surprise them. They leaped higher. The plastic gun wasn't a real weapon. It was just a stupid toy.
Look out!
The snarling creatures made another high leap at the wall. Claws scraped at the brick and held on. Hot wolf breath tingled my skin. Oh! My arms flew up as I lost my balance. I grabbed for Marty, but I missed. I landed hard on my back on the other side of the wall, and Marty leapt down beside me. The two werewolves were on top of the wall now. They glared down at us, red eyes glowing, tongues out, preparing to pounce. Marty dragged me to my feet.
Run!
We can't outrun them. There was a rumbling sound, a clatter. Marty and I both turned and saw two yellow eyes glowing against the dark sky. As it drew nearer, I could make out its long, sleek shape. It was the tram. Without saying a word, we both began running to the road. Somehow we had to climb on it. The werewolves were inches behind us. I could almost feel their hot breath on the back of my neck. In a few more seconds, Marty and I would make our jump. I watched the tram speed around the curve. I kept my eyes on the front car, took a deep breath, prepared to jump, and then Marty fell. He stumbled over his own bare feet and dropped to the ground, landing hard on his stomach. I couldn't stop in time. I ran right into him and fell on top of him. The tram sped past us. My heart pounding, I scrambled to my feet and frantically pulled Marty up by both arms. Get up! We took off after the tram, our bare feet pounding on the hard road. The last car bounced a few feet ahead of us. With a desperate leap, I hoisted myself up and into the last seat. I turned back to find Marty running behind the tram. His hands reached for the back of the tram car.
I can't make it.
Run! You've got to! Marty put on a burst of speed and grabbed the back of the car with both hands. It dragged him for several feet until he swung himself around and dropped into the seat. We made it! We got away from those howling werewolves. They stood in the road, hunched over in defeat, watching us escape. Marty and I grinned at each other.
We've got to tell your dad that this place is messed up. Those werewolves, they weren't kidding around. They were real. Aaron, they weren't actors.
I nodded. I felt so glad that Marty finally agreed with me. And he wasn't pretending that it was all robots and special effects. We both knew that we had faced real dangers and real monsters. You know, something was terribly wrong at Shocker Studios. Dad had told us he wanted a full report, and well, he was going to get one. I settled back in the seat, trying to calm down. But I shot straight up again when I realized we weren't alone. Marty, look! We aren't the only passengers.
What's going on? Your dad said we were the only ones on the tour. And now the tram is...
Marty's mouth fell open. The other passengers on the tram all turned around at the same time. And I saw their grinning jaws, their dark, empty eye sockets, the gray bones of their skulls. The other passengers were all grinning skeletons. Their jaws opened in dry laughter. Bones rattled and clattered as they raised their yellow, skeletal hands to point at us. Their skulls bobbed and bounced as the tram carried us faster and faster through the darkness. Marty and I slumped low in the seat, trembling, staring at the grinning skulls, the pointing fingers. Who were they? And where were they taking us? The tram picked up speed. We were flying through the darkness. I forced myself to turn away from the grinning skulls and peered out. Beyond the trees, I could see the low buildings of the movie studio. As I stared, they grew smaller and faded into the blackness of the night. Marty, we're not going back to the main platform. We're heading the wrong way. We're going away from all the buildings. Marty swallowed hard. I could see the panic in his eyes.
What can we do?
We've got to get off. We've got to jump. Marty had slumped all the way down in his seat, as low as he could get. I think he was trying to hide from the skeletons. Now he raised his head and peeked over the side of the tram.
Aaron, we can't jump. We're going too fast.
He was right. We were rocketing along the road. The trees and shrubs flew past in a dark blur. Then as we squealed into a sharp curve, a tall building seemed to jump into our path. It was a castle. Twin towers reached up to the sky. A solid stone wall rose up in front of it, and the road curved straight into the castle wall. We were roaring down the road, still picking up speed. The skeletons rattled and clattered and laughed in their dry, screeching laugh. They bounced in their seats, their bones cracking, jumping in excitement, as we zoomed right up to the solid stone wall. My legs trembled. My heart pounded. But somehow I managed to stand up on the seat. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and jumped. I landed hard on my side and rolled. Marty hit the ground on his stomach and rolled onto his back. I came to a stop under a tree and turned to the castle just in time to see the tram plunge into the stone wall without a sound. The spotlights on the castle wall dimmed.
Aaron, are you okay?
I turned to find him on his hands and knees on the other side of the road. I scrambled to my feet. I had scraped my side, but it didn't hurt too badly. I'm okay. Did you see that?
I saw it, but I don't believe it. How did the tram go through the wall? Do you think the castle isn't really there? That it's an optical illusion? Some kind of trick?
Well, there's an easy way to find out. We walked side by side on the road. The wind rustled in the trees, making them whisper all around us. The pavement felt cold under my bare feet. We've got to find my dad. I'm sure he can explain everything to us.
No, I hope so.
We stepped up to the castle wall. I stuck out both hands, expecting them to go right through it. But my hand slapped solid stone. Marty put both of his hands against the wall.
It's a real wall. So how did the tram go through it?
It's a ghost tram. A ghost tram filled with skeletons.
But we rode in it.
I slapped the wall with both hands and spun away from it. I'm sick of mysteries. I'm sick of being scared. I'm sick of werewolves and monsters. I'm never going to another scary movie as long as I live.
Look, Aaron, your father can explain it all. I'm sure he can.
Keeping close together, we made our way around to the side of the castle. Strange animal howls and a frightening cackle cut through the air. I ignored all the sounds. I didn't want to think about whether they were being made by real monsters or fakes. I didn't want to think about the frightening creatures we had run into, or the close calls Marty and I had had. I didn't want to think. At the back of the castle, the road appeared again. I hope we're going in the right direction.
Me too.
We picked up our pace, walking quickly in the middle of the road. We tried not to pay attention to the sharp animal calls, the shrill cries, the howls, and the moans that seemed to follow us everywhere. The road sloped uphill. Marty and I leaned forward as we climbed. The frightening cries and howls followed us up the hill. As we neared the top, I saw several low buildings. Yes! Marty, look! We must be heading back to the main platform. I started jogging toward the buildings. Marty trotted close behind. Suddenly, we both stopped. Somehow we had made a circle. And we were back on Shock Street. The cemetery came into view. I remembered the green hands poking up from the ground and pulling us down. My whole body shuddered. I didn't want to be back here. I never wanted to see this terrifying street again. Marty stood beside me, hands pressed against his waist, staring hard. Dozens of gray puffs rose silently, like cotton, and floated up from the graves. Then over the cemetery and out over the street. Soon they were floating above Marty and me, hovering low. As we stared up at them, they started to inflate. I saw faces inside them like the man in the moon. Old scowling faces, lined and creased. Eyes narrowed to dark slits. I grabbed Marty's shoulder. I wanted to get out from under them. I pressed my hands over my eyes, trying to shut them out. I could hear the shrill rush of wind as the ghostly clouds swirled around us. And then, I heard a man's voice.
Cut! Hey, print that one. Good scene, everyone.
I lowered my hand slowly and opened my eyes. A man came striding up to Marty and me. He wore jeans and a gray sweatshirt under a brown leather jacket. He had a blue and white Dodgers cap sideways on his head. A blonde ponytail tumbled out from under it. He carried a clipboard in one hand, and he had a whistle around his neck. He smiled at Marty and me, and he flashed us a thumbs up.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Russ Denver. Good job. You guys look really scared.
I'm so glad to see a real live human.
This tour, it's totally messed up. The creatures, they're alive. They tried to hurt us. They really did. It wasn't any fun. It wasn't like a ride.
It was really gross. The werewolf snapped at us and chased us up a wall. We tried to run, but we didn't know what to do.
We were running through
The two of us started talking at once, telling this guy Denver all of the frightening things that had happened to us on the tour.
me, and I didn't know what to do.
Whoa, take it easy, guys. It's all special effects. Didn't they explain that we were making a movie here? That we were filming your reactions?
No one explained that. My dad brought us here. He designed the studio tour, and he told us we were going to be the first to try it out. But he didn't tell us about any movie being filmed here.
Marty put his hand on my shoulder. He was trying to calm me down, but I didn't want to be calmed down. I was really angry. Mr. Denver turned to a group of crew members.
Take 30, guys. Let's break for dinner.
They moved away, talking among themselves. Mr. Denver turned back to us.
I'm sorry, guys. I thought your dad had explained to you that...
It's okay, really. We just got a little scared. All of the creatures seemed so real, and we didn't see any other people anywhere. You're the first real person we've seen all afternoon.
My dad must be really worried. He said he'd be waiting for us at the main platform. Can you tell us how to get there?
Hey, no problem. You see that house over there with the open door?
Marty and I stared at the house across the street. A narrow path led up to the front door, from which a pale yellow light shone.
That's Shockrow's House of Shocks. Look, go right through that door, straight through the house.
But we won't get shocked in there? In the movie, anyone who goes into Shockrow's house gets jolted with 20 million volts of electricity.
That's just in the movie. The house is just as said. It's perfectly safe. Go through the house, turn out the back. You're going to see the main building on the other side of the street. You can't miss it.
Thank you.
Marty turned and started running full speed toward the house. I turned back to Mr. Denver.
I'm sorry for yelling at you before. I was just so scared.
Mr. Denver had turned away, and I saw the long power cord that was plugged into his back. He wasn't a movie director. He was some kind of robot. Fake, like all the others. And he had been lying to us. I turned and started to run.
Don't go in there, Marty. Stop. Don't go in that house.
Too late. Marty was already running through the door. I had to stop him. The director was fake. I knew he wasn't telling the truth. Stop! My bare feet pounded on the hard pavement. I plunged up the path as Marty trotted into the doorway. Marty! I flew to the doorway, reached out both hands, and made a wild dive to tackle him. But I missed. I skidded across the walk on my stomach. As soon as Marty entered the house, I saw the flash of white. Then the sharp crackle of electricity. The room exploded in a flash of lightning so bright, I had to shield my eyes. When I opened them, I saw Marty sprawled face down on the floor. No! Scrambling to my feet, I dove into the house. Would I get shot too? I didn't care. I had to help Marty out of there. Marty, please! I grabbed his shoulders and started to shake him. Wake up, Marty! Snap out of it! Marty! He didn't open his eyes, and I suddenly felt a chill. A dark shadow slid over me. I wasn't alone in the house. Was it Shockrow? A tall figure leaned over me. I struggled to see his face. Dad! I'm so glad to see you!
Aaron? What are you doing here?
It's Marty. You've got to help him, Dad. He's been shocked and he's hurt. He leaned closer.
Do something, Dad. Marty's hurting. He isn't moving. He won't open his eyes. The studio tour was so awful, Dad. Something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong.
Dad placed his hands on Marty's shoulders, and as his face came into the soft light, I saw that he wasn't my father.
Who are you? You're not my dad. Why aren't you helping me? Why aren't you helping Marty? Do something, please. Where's my dad? Who are you? Help me, somebody! Help me! Go! Help me! Dad!
Mr. Wright stood staring down at Aaron and Marty. He shook his head unhappily and shut his eyes. Jared Curtis, one of the studio engineers, came running into the house of shocks.
Mr. Wright, what happened to your two kid robots?
Oh, programming problems.
He pointed to the Aaron robot, frozen in place on her knees beside the Marty robot.
I had to shut the girl off. Her memory chip must be bad. The Aaron robot was supposed to think of me as her father, but just now, she didn't even recognize me.
Hey, what about the Marty robot?
Oh, it's totally down. I think the electrical system shorted out or something.
That's a shame.
Jared rolled the Marty robot over. He pulled up the T-shirt and fiddled with some dials on the back.
Mr. Wright, it was a great idea to make robot kids to test the park. I think we can fix them.
Jared opened up a panel on Marty's back and squinted at the red and green wires.
All the other creatures and monsters, all the robots work perfectly. Not a single bug.
You know, Jared, I should have known there was a problem yesterday. We were in my office. The Aaron robot asked about her mother. I built her. She doesn't have a mother.
Mr. Wright tossed up his hands.
Oh, well, no problem. Listen, I'll take these two back to the shop, and we'll put in new chips, and, well, they'll be as good as new. Then we'll give them a shot next week again before, the park opens for real.
Then he carried them to the engineering building, back to his lab.
A shocker on Shock Street.